Morning everybody. For today's session, we are going to be focusing on habits and techniques that will help us with our painting practice, starting with cleaning the board before you start so that the paint doesn't go all over your paper when it's wet. Make sure to shake your paints and to check the wetness of your paper. Now, your paper shouldn't actually be shiny or have puddles on it, and the way you make sure is to dab it with your sponge, not dragging it but dabbing it. And then when you pick up some paint with your brush, you make sure to only dip the tip like this. So once your setup is ready like this, you can start by painting a lemniscate, a yellow lemniscate. Now we will be working with this form gradually using lightest to darkest. So we're going to start with yellow first, and we are going to be making the form with a lemniscate and then a diamond in the middle and then two loops on the sides, just like this. So the reason why we're starting with the lightest color first is so that if we make mistakes, we can go over it with the other darker colors. Now, I am going over it with ultramarine, and I'm trying to find the pattern going over and under, but as you can see here, I actually made a mistake that I didn't notice at the time. But because it's wet paper, it allows us to edit after we make the mistake, and I'll show you here how I do it later on. So here I'm trying to continue it until I notice my mistake over here. So I decided to go over it all with the ultramarine, just going over the form, the lemniscate. So try to follow along with your eyes the form right now. There's a lemniscate and then there's a diamond with two loops going all around it. Alright, as you can see, even though I already painted some of the lines, I was able to change it by wetting it a little bit. Now I'm going over with Prussian blue and really setting the pattern. This time I'm going over it a lot slower and really finding where the line should go over and under. And I'm really making some gaps between. When it goes under, I really stop, as you can see, and I leave a gap of green. So I go over and then under here and then over and then under here, but I went a bit over, but the water allowed me to erase it a little bit. So you can always erase with a wet brush and use the sponge to remove the paint. So here I went under twice, but I can fix that later on. So here I go under and then over, and then I realized that I went over twice. So look how the wet paper allows me to correct my mistake. Now I'm continuing the form. So when you do this, just be careful and be very, very alert. But if you make a mistake, do not worry, because I'll show you here what to do to define how the lines go over and under. So I'm going to go over all of my forms to show you that when I pick up some water with the brush, I can clean up the sides of the form. Do you see? There's a bit of a white gap when I go over it with a brush that I wet but dry a bit with a sponge. So it's not a sopping wet brush. I just clean it and then use the sponge to dry it, and that picks up the paint here on the sides. The water loosens the paint, and then it's like I'm picking it up, I'm absorbing it with my brush and placing it onto the sponge. So now you can see that there are clear white lines on either side of all of the lines here. You can always keep editing, and that's what's good with wet on wet painting. You can keep editing it if you find an error. When you're happy with your form and your pattern goes well, then you will fill in the gaps inside with lemon yellow. The gaps inside with lemon yellow, and be very careful. Once again, don't wet it too much. Just use the tip of your brush and spread it around. You can make the yellow one go into the gaps though, and it will make it glow. So don't go into the middle of the lines, but you can go on the gaps like this. Next, clean your brush very well again by washing it and wiping it, and then I'm going to just clean my sponge here because I picked up a lot of the paint from cleaning the sides. I'm going to be using golden yellow now to make a glow tightly around, and as you can see, it was already a bit too dry, so that's when I added the water. So I'm adding water here so that when I add more gold, it will spread easier. I did it too closely here to the blue, but as you can see, I was able to pick it up with my brush. I just wet it, dried it, and then I put back the blue in there. So whenever you make a mistake, just take a breath and dry your brush, and then use the brush to pick up the paint that's not supposed to be there, and then you can add the paint that is supposed to be there. So here I'm just expanding the glow with the use of water until it fades out into the edges. Just let it fade out into the edges, and then I'm going to be cleaning the brush again and putting carmine red as a border here, and I'm trying to gradually fade it into the gold. So for this, you can make it a little more wet, it's okay. So I'm trying to go closer to the gold, and then in that gap between the two, I'm putting the vermilion, and the vermilion will be the middle color. It will complete the gradient, and after you put the vermilion, then you can blend all three colors, the gold, the carmine, and the vermilion all together. You can come closer to the form.